Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic, a discussion between a professional film critic and lecturer and me, his wife of 20 years, who just likes to watch movies for fun. I'm your co-host, Julia.
And this is Barry the Film Critic. Hey, everyone. Actually, this isn't Barry the Film Critic. This is an AI rendering of Barry the Film Critic. Here is my AI rendering of my movie review of AI. So whammy kablammy, folks. See this movie. It's super great. 2.5 stars. Boom.
Ooh, should I call you Mecha Barry for this?
Mecha B. I like it. Ooh, can you call me Gigolo Barry?
Oh my gosh. What do you know? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Not much.
We're talking about AI, artificial intelligence, the Spielberg film from 2001. And how many times have you seen this?
Many times. Yeah, I love this movie very much. It's a fun one to talk about. It is a summer movie, by the way. We're covering a lot of summer movies during this season, and this was a big one during the summer of 2001. This was the same summer as Shrek and the first Fast and Furious. So it was a very curious summer, as well as Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes and Pearl Harbor. Memorable movie summer. And this one stood out because it was shrouded in secrecy. I didn't get the chance to show it to you before we started recording, but the trailers for this movie made it look like a sweet, cutesy, sentimental family film. So you can imagine why the box office to this thing wasn't so good.
When's your birthday? I never had a birthday.
His name is David.
I feel it. That's creepy. Whoa, that's so real.
In a distant future, in an age of intelligent machines, he is the first robotic child programmed to love and coexist as a member of a family. His is a tale of humanity and a journey to find his place among humans and machines.
I'm a boy.
You are a real boy. At least as real as I've ever made one.
And the reviews also were very confused. People like myself either were just madly in love with it or they were passionately in hate with it. But it's probably the most divisive Steven Spielberg film ever and remains that way to this day. So I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Okay, well, this is my second time seeing it, but I have to tell you, as usual, it's been probably 16, 17 years since I've seen it. And I was like, yeah, I don't remember anything.
It's not a casual watch, I mean, there's some films that I'll sit down and watch, but I'll watch by them myself because I know this isn't like a movie you just casually, let's watch AI. It's heavy going stuff. It is.
So watching it the first time, I hated this film.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, no, this movie is terrible. I really don't like it. Now that I'm a mom, I'm older, I actually really liked it. And I was telling you today that I like this movie. I have a huge problem with AI, as we'll talk about. But the movie itself, I thought was great.
I mean, it's basically Megan, but with it's a little it's slightly different, but it's basically Megan, right?
I don't think so.
I mean, almost the same movie, right?
I mean, David doesn't go on like a killing spree.
Well, not initially.
All right, well, let's get started because our film takes place in a future world where, oh man, the oceans have drowned many coastal cities.
You're gonna quote the Ben Kingsley opening? Yes, do it.
Well, no, I didn't write down the whole thing, but
the greenhouse gases have eliminated most of the planet. The human population is decimated, but robots are a thing of necessity as well as life.
Oh my gosh. It's like, okay, it's a little heavy-handed, I gotta say.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, it's like, human beings have nothing. We have less land. Now they're, it's basically like...
The upside, we got robots.
But governments are telling couples and women like, yeah, you're going to have to get like a permit to get pregnant now.
But that's not even science fiction. There are parts of the world where this is already the case.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is like in every country, I mean, that's insane. And so they're telling couples because there's limited resources, they just like, nope, sorry, you can't have kids. And I bet you, and the movie doesn't really go into this, but I bet like the rich elite people, like, yeah, they can probably have as many kids as they want still. It's just like the poors that can't do it.
The poors?
Yeah. Yeah, it's always like the middle to like lower class people who end up suffering from these types of policies. Like rich people can still do whatever they want, which is typical.
Wow. I mean, we get a glimpse of those different classes, and that pool party does look pretty popular with kids. So maybe you have a point there. But let's get past the opening.
I'm just trying to set the stage. Like, it's heavy-handed and like, okay, yes, global warming, we know. Okay.
Oh, man. So you couldn't get in. So immediately, I don't like the politics of this movie.
Well, it was just like, oh, dang, okay. So we meet Dr. Hobby, played by William Hurt.
Yeah, the late, great William Hurt.
Oh, he died?
Yeah.
Okay, you're not like...
I'll double check.
You double check.
Because I've done that before, where I've declared I've toe tagged actors who are still with us. Okay. No, he just died last year. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and I hate that. I love William Hurt.
Last year.
Yeah, just died at the age of 71. Yeah, wonderful actor.
Oh,
He's
so young.
Fantastic in this movie. It's weird. Science fiction. I wouldn't have thought it would really serve William Hurt because this is the actor of Kiss of the Spider Woman and The Big Chill. But between this and Until the End of the World and Dark City, I mean, he's fantastic in science fiction. And this opening scene, man, it is killer. I love this scene so much. Dr. Hobby's given a presentation to a room of his associates and colleagues talking about how, okay, we need to create a robot boy, but then robot children. Thank you. But then it becomes this question of, not only can you create a robot that can love, but will the love be returned by the owner of the robot?
Yeah. If a robot expresses human emotion and love, would the human genuinely love the robot back? And
Dr. Hobby does it in this very secret. It's got a view, but it's his secret lab with a bunch of the associates. We don't really know what all the associations even are, but there is a mysterious young woman in the presence. And he stabs her with a needle. And we're not even initially sure what that's about. And we realize that he's treating this woman cruelly because she's not even real. She's a mecha. And right from the beginning, the film is establishing the uncomfortable relationship that humans have with mecha. We see the film kind of hints at it, but over the course of the movie, we realize that mechas are being used as either servants or for pleasure bots.
Yeah. You know what's weird about this scene is, so he does stab her in the hand and she's like, ow, because I guess some of them have like pain sensors.
Yeah.
And he's like, how did that make you feel? And she's kind of like, you stabbed me, like it hurt or something. And he's like, but what did it do to your feelings? And she was like, well, you didn't hurt my feelings. You hurt my hand. Kind of saying like, when a human does that to another human, you're like, you violated me. Like, you have, now I don't trust you. There's a whole list of things we would say about that type of violation. Whereas this mecha, because they're short for mechanical, these mecha robots have no clue about that. And then the other weird part is he like whispers in her ear, like to get undressed.
Right. She starts to undress. It's because he needs to have access to the back of her head and also. Oh. But you're absolutely right. And she starts to take her clothes off and he says, that's enough. And no one in the audience is responding to any of this in a negative way. It's like, this is how, it's like he's a magician and she's his assistant, or this is whatever, demonstrating on a lab animal. Yeah, it's very dehumanizing, except, of course, this isn't a human being.
Well, we'll get into that later because I have so many thoughts about that.
All right.
Okay, so then there's one woman who is like, all right, let's say you do this and you create a robot child? Like what is the human, what is
The responsibility.
what is the responsibility that these parents in quotes, have to this child?
Yeah.
And he doesn't really give an answer, does he?
Well, he speaks about it in poetical terms. And
Well, I mean, he's kind of like, hey, we're going to be filling this void for people who want to be parents, who can't have real kids. And this is going to basically take care of that like mental anguish people feel.
Yeah, he gives her a non-answer. There's a pan to all the other scientists kind of talking over this. And then the scene ends with the mecha basically finishing up her makeup.
Yeah.
Kind of just kind of, frivolously, not even paying attention to what's going on. There's a detachment in this scene because the scientists are speaking, about very intimate human feelings, and they're speaking about them in a detached manner. And for that matter, the mecha is also detached from it. So right away, we're establishing that there is a problem with the human relationship to artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then we go to 20 months later, and we have a couple. We have Henry and Monica, and
Sam Robards and Frances O'Connor, who I wish she was still doing more stuff. I love her, and I love her in this.
So they're kind of like there's like a child in a pod. I guess he's in suspended animation.
He's in some sort of coma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some disease. I don't really know. They don't really say what's wrong with him. But he must be, they must have just put him in a coma to help heal his body. But they're like, okay, basically this child is a vegetable. And Monica is just crying over this little boy, obviously her son. And then the doctor is telling the husband, like, she's not going to be able to grieve. Like, she can't, you keep coming here. You can't grieve the death of this child. So I'm like, is the child actually dead? Or is it like life support that the doctor's like, oh, he's never going to get better? Because it was kind of weird where the doctor's like, well, oh, he's been like this for 5 years. So for 5 years.
There is a narrative reason for this. We'll get to that.
Okay, so they're not able to grieve. The husband works for the robot firm, and this part, so Dr. Hobby is like, we need a couple to like take David and have him in their house and like basically see if this is a good idea or not. And they pick Henry and Monica, and he says something like, well, they've suffered loss, so they're a great candidate.
Yes, look at them. They're grieving. They're desperate. They are sad. They're looking for hope.
Yeah.
They're perfect.
So he brings this robot home and without telling his wife, and she, of course, freaks out. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, notice the way we first see David. It's a shot where there's a great deal of distortion. He's in the elevator door, and he looks so thin and skinny. He looks, it's a foreshadowing of what his artificial intelligence would look like generations from now, what artificial intelligence in general would look like. But at first he's distorted. He looks like an alien. It's almost like we're looking at a shadow, and he slowly walks into the frame. And the first thing we see are his feet. He walks only so close to the door, and the camera pans up, and it's beautiful little cherub, Haley Joel Osment, and the first thing he says is, "I like your floor,"
which is something that
of course the mom is freaked out.
Small children say, every child notices the floor of their house.
Yeah, but I think it's an interesting choice for the first thing he says because he's talking about design. There's no emotion in it, even though he has something of a smile on his face, but the smile has been basically painted on.
Yeah. So Henry tells Monica about the imprinting process. Well,
first she freaks out, which I love. She absolutely freaks out, which is great. And again, Frances O'Connor, she's playing this very real, which I love. We'll get into the whole Kubrick connection, but there's a way you could play a scene like this where you're detached or you underplay it. No, she plays it very recognizable. This is outrageous. They have a kid in the hospital who is basically
dead.
Basically dead, right? And they're in such a fragile emotional state, and here her husband is bringing a robot child into their home as what? A comfort, a distraction? I mean,
a pet?
What is this? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, he tells her about the imprinting process, and he's just like, look, you don't have to do it. Like, spend some time with David. If you want me to take him back, I'll take him back. Like, no questions, whatever. And so the imprinting process is so that once, the quote unquote parent imprints with the robot, that robot belongs to that human for life. And if there is ever, I don't know, the parent dies, they don't want him anymore, then that robot basically gets destroyed.
Yeah, let's bring it back to the fact.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, like what happens to our car,
Yeah.
Take it back to the factory. And they're like, well, we'll get you a new Saturn.
Well, yeah. Well, and I was just thinking like, oh, so, okay. I don't really know how I feel about that particular point, but it's interesting.
Well, let's remember they're robots, so
yeah.
Should we care about them?
Well, I don't know, because anyways, we'll get into that.
But it's a robot.
Part.
It's not just a robot that looks and feels like a real boy, but it's been a boy who's been programmed to look at you and say "I love you" and feel it every time he says it.
Yeah. Okay,
can they feel?
So
can
David,
they really feel love?
What is this thing called love?
So David just ends up following Monica around, which is she's like trying to get work done. Every time she turns around, he's like right there. He doesn't eat or drink, so he just like kind of mimics them. It feels like a cosplay with a kid. Everything's pretend.
And Haley Joel Osment, and this is one of the great child performances. I'm just going to jump to that. He said that his mode of getting into the character was he never blinks once in this film. I don't doubt that. I certainly never caught him doing it, which makes all these scenes scary. He's scary as David in the opening scenes. There's a number of moments where his eyes are reflected, where he looks very insect-like. His eyes are against reflective surfaces. It looks like there's multitudes of eyes, which is exactly how Monica feels. So in this bit of the film, it's funny, but it's also scary because, as the husband indicates, he's very good at sneaking up on people. He's very good at just like this ninja ability to just like appear around a corner when you don't expect him.
Okay, so she's pretending to play with him, eat with him, get him dressed. Like, he doesn't even really need to sleep, but like they do the whole nighttime ritual anyways.
And at one point, she locks him in a closet.
Yeah. And when she finally opens it again, he's like, oh, is that a game? She's like, yeah, it's called hide and go seek. And you were like, oh, that no one would ever do that. I was like, if you brought a robot child to me, I definitely would lock that child robot in a closet.
I'm not going to say who, but I do know a mother who once told me that her daughter was driving her so crazy she hid in a closet.
Okay, but that mom hid herself. She put the child in the closet.
But still, she hid in a closet.
It was only for a few minutes.
Was it, though?
Yeah, it's fine. It was my mom. I guess I was having a tantrum when I was little, and my mom was like, I'm out of here. I'm just going to go hide in this closet. And I stopped having a tantrum. So she felt like that was a parenting win.
So if you had a robot child, would you feel okay about locking him in a closet if they were following you around?
If it was a robot, first of all, she has not imprinted with him yet. So there's no like feeling.
So that makes it okay.
I mean, it's a robot.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just saying, this is her first day with David, and she like puts him in the closet and closes the door, and then she's like, I need some space here, because he's just like following her around.
Right.
So I'm saying, like, you thought that was a little bit weird. I'm like, no, I could totally relate to that.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is weird. I mean, he's following her around like he's a little duckling,
Yeah. So, but like, see, David doesn't need to do any of these things. He like literally doesn't need to eat, get dressed, sleep, read books with her, play, like nothing. So it's really weird, that this is even happening.
Well, he learns by watching and observing. That's his thing. So, just being around Monica is an education.
So she, remembers her son, her real son, who's in a coma, and she's looking over the imprinting stuff, and she decides to do it. She decides to imprint with David without, does she even talk to Henry?
Well, let's see. When is the dinner scene where he laughs. I think that's because she does have these moments with him that are good. I think is there's a scene where they're sitting around dinner. It's very eerie. Nobody's saying anything, and suddenly David just explodes with laughter. But it's the moment where he first endears himself to the parents.
Which I thought was super weird.
But they haven't had anything from this kid but stares. So suddenly they're having and it makes her laugh because it takes her off guard. And she probably hasn't laughed in months,
Years, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. So I'm with you. Again, this whole scenario is odd, but that is the first moment where he kind of breaks through the fact that he's been weirding him out since he got through the door.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I feel like she just randomly decides to imprint with him, and she follows the directions and reads these words, and
she puts her hand on the back of his neck. He has to look her right in the eye, and she reads a series of very oddly chosen words.
And then she's like, I don't know if I did that right. And he's like, I love you, Mommy. And all of a sudden she's like, you called me Mommy. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's all it takes is for this robot boy to just call her Mommy, and now it's oh man, I really made the right decision here.
Well, he's different in this moment. It's when she says the magic words, it is like he's a different person. He looks a little confused at first, but really everything is processing. And suddenly his emotions are different. His demeanor is different. Over the course of the film, we watch how David becomes more and more human-like. Not human, but human-like. And this is the first moment where he's no longer this, attentive little insect. He's actually acting like a little boy. So yeah, she melts, understandably, because suddenly, she's hearing something from a kid that she's slowly starting to warm up to after not hearing anything for so long.
Yeah, it just...
You're not convinced.
It was just really weird. Okay, so shortly after that, this is just an aside, but Henry and Monica are going out somewhere for a dinner, and she's like, well, we're going to leave you home alone because you're a robot and we don't really need to pay a babysitter. So
smart parents.
So she's like, when we leave, all the doors and windows will go smart. And I was like, smart technology? This movie was talking about smart technology before any of us had ever heard of it.
Of course.
So,
well, the movie Spielberg did right after this was Minority Report. He had futurists on both films. So we have these guys who are like, what's coming up next? And these guys are like, well, you're going to have this.
Smart technology.
Yeah. There's going to be this singer named Taylor Swift. You'll just see. Just wait 12 years.
All right. At one point, David asked Monica when she's going to die. And, he's talking about, oh, no, I'm going to be all alone. And he doesn't want her to die. And because David has this creepy Teddy Ruxpin doll named Teddy. And
Teddy is a super toy.
Yeah, Teddy's a super toy.
He was an early model, and he used to belong to her son, and he's been inoperative in a little hat box in her closet. She takes him down, turns him on. The thing I didn't notice until I never thought of it until I watched it with you last night was that Teddy starts speaking, and he's voiced by Jack Angel, and it's a wonderful performance. But the way he sounds, the way he talks, just like Stanley Kubrick.
Oh.
Stanley Kubrick, to talk about it, because we need to talk about it. This originated from this was going to be Kubrick's next film after Eyes Wide Shut. And Kubrick for a while really waffled because he wanted to have a CGI boy play David, and the technology wasn't there. And after Jurassic Park, he was interested in pursuing CGI again to create a human boy. And then there was talks of Joseph Mazzello from Jurassic Park playing David. I don't know if a finished script was ever available, but there were many hand-drawn illustrations that Kubrick provided, and I remember seeing a lot of those even before Kubrick passed away. There were some of those were published of some of the imagery in this film. So this was going to be a Kubrick film, and Kubrick let Spielberg in on it. Talked to him over the years about I really want to do this. How would you do this? And then finally, apparently at some point, Kubrick said to Spielberg, I want you to do this. I think this is more your forte. Kubrick died, And Spielberg had a variety of films he was going to make, including he was going to do Harry Potter, he was going to make Memoirs of a Geisha, and there was a version of Minority Report that he was going to do with Tom Cruise and Matt Damon, which didn't happen. And he ditched all of those to do this because Christian Kubrick and the Kubrick family stepped forward and said, our dad really wanted you to do this. So if you want to do this, here's everything. And of course, Stanley Kubrick had just boxes and boxes of AI material because he'd been working on this film for so long, and like everything else, he meticulously prepared. So Spielberg had a wealth of things. He worked with a few people. It was an original screenplay by Spielberg, but he's, taking from everything Kubrick did. So when this thing came out, everybody's like, this is a Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg film. They talk about how it was like a fusion of the two. And, there's a lot of Kubrickian elements in the film. There's a lot of scenes where you get the sense like Kubrick probably would have filmed it this way. Or, you do get the sense like Spielberg is trying to emulate a master, even though he himself is a master. There's a lot to talk about to that matter. I'll say really quickly, I think we need to just own up to the fact that this is a Spielberg film. Everybody wants to talk about the spiritual collaboration that happened, but this is, we don't talk about that when we talk about, Brian De Palma doing Hitchcock. No, it's a De Palma film. We don't talk about, Steven Soderbergh doing Godard. Like, no, this is a Spielberg film. And Spielberg was very aware of the style and look of the master. But this movie had the baggage of being like a Kubrick Spielberg movie, but really it's Spielberg. And but the funny thing is, a lot of elements in this movie came directly from Kubrick, and one of them is the teddy bear. A lot of people said, "Oh, that's got to be Spielberg." Nope, that was Kubrick. Kubrick said, you got to have a Jiminy Cricket character because this is Pinocchio.
Yes, lots of Pinocchio. We'll get more into that, but David asks Teddy, is 50 years a long time? And he's like, nope. Basically, it's not a long time. And you're going to live forever. And then your parents are going to die. I mean, he doesn't say this, but it's kind of implied.
Oh, Teddy's great. No, life sucks, kid. It's very brief.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
you
have a very short time with these people.
Doesn't mince words with David.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, then, surprise, Martin is alive and awake, and this is their real son. And he comes home, and now Martin and David are brothers now. So Martin says like he's real and wants to know if David can do cool things.
Martin's a jerk.
Well, think about it.
He's insecure, but he's
been replaced.
Yeah, and he's a jerk.
He's also been in a coma for 5 years.
He sucks. I got no sympathy for Martin.
What if he has had brain damage?
He doesn't have brain damage.
How do you know?
Because he's a jerk. He's very articulate. There's nothing wrong with this kid. He was a popsicle for a while, and then he got defrosted, and now he's a jerk. I got no love for this kid.
So, he does ask him, like, well, what do you remember? Like, what's your birthday? What do you remember? And of course, David's like, I don't know. But David ends up drawing him like a bird, and
the first thing he remembers.
Yeah, is a bird. So, you kind of get the feeling like, I don't know, maybe they're gonna bond, but it ends up just being major sibling rivalry. Monica does read the boys the story of Pinocchio, which I was like, okay,
well. Remember, Martin goes, I want you to read this story because I think David's really going to like it.
Oh,
he's a jerk.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's a shot of the three of them where Monica is in a rowboat reading to the two boys. And I thought, this is interesting because that's a Kubrick shot. That's out of Barry Lyndon. That's an unused shot out of Eyes Wide Shut. Like, Kubrick loved those shots of Barry Lyndon. Yeah, like, he loved those shots of, like, a family in a rowboat together. It doesn't make any sense. Like, where is this? Because this apparently takes place in New Jersey. So I don't know. I don't know where they're at. But at one point they're in a rowboat.
Somewhere on the East Coast.
But it's not. Again, it's like, oh man, okay, that's definitely a Kubrick shot right there.
So we have the infamous spinach incident where the whole family is sitting down to dinner. David's fake eating. And
you guys see, he can't have any food in his system.
Right. And Martin's just like chewing spinach and like showing his food, just being, rude and egging him on. And so David just wants to emulate him and mimic him and puts all the spinach in his mouth, and then short circuits. So he has to get cleaned out by the scientists.
I hate this scene because the scientists they bring to the house, it's kind of like when you bring like a tech guy to your house to like fix your laptop, and this guy's like sucking the spinach at David. He's like, spinach is for Popeye, not for little robo boys. I'm like, oh, this guy, this is probably like the third gig this guy's had today. He's had it up to here.
Oh my god!
You wouldn't believe the things I got to suck out of these stupid robots. These people are gross.
I wish these mechas would just follow the rules.
I had to get dog food out of this one guy. I mean, these robots are just disgusting.
Then Martin tells David, like, I want you to go on a secret mission for me. And long story short, he tells David to go cut a lock of Monica's hair.
Yeah.
While she's sleeping. So, he's like standing over her with these scissors, trying to cut a piece of her hair, of course.
Again, Martin is terrible. Martin is the Omen in this situation.
So, of course, that ends badly when Henry wakes up and Monica's like defending him, and Henry's like, no, this is terrible. Look what he's trying to do.
Well, then we cut to the birthday party.
Yeah. So, but Henry said something like, if he's capable of love, he has to be capable of hate. It's reasonable to assume that.
It's interesting that he's the one always coming to these conclusions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought that was interesting. Like, if you program a mecha to love, like, wouldn't he know the opposite or be able to do the opposite?
Well, something you brought up earlier today. Like, Henry doesn't imprint himself with this boy. Yeah. And now Henry is the one, who's very quick to accuse David of everything. I mean, it's a detached relationship. It's like, okay, like David is Monica's problem. That's Monica's thing.
Yeah.
It's for Monica. It's not
weird.
For me. Does he tell his friends like, oh, that's Monica's? It's not mine. I don't even talk to that.
Yeah,
I don't even talk to that.
That's
kid.
her mecha. That's her like fake son.
It's interesting because I never noticed it until now. I mean, it really is a mother-son dynamic that is the core of this movie. The father, as well as Sam Robards, is playing him. He's an interesting figure, but for the most part, he's sort of removed from the first act of the movie, and that's when he should be a pivotal part of it.
So now we have Martin's birthday pool party, and it's funny because like no one was told like, hey, there's gonna be a child mecha at this party. Like all the kids are like surprised that he's there. Like, oh, what? It's a kid robot? Like, weird, Like none of the, I don't know. It just seemed odd to me that.
Well, they're jerks too. They're like, wow, my gardener's a robot, but I've never seen a robot boy before.
Well, right. Like the parents didn't Monica think like, hey, maybe I should tell the parents.
Maybe I should put it in the invitation. Warning, there will be a mecha child at Martin's birthday.
Well, yeah, because he's the first of its kind. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the beta. Like there's never.
Do you think the invitation was like, Martin's birthday featuring David the Wonder Mecha?
Well, I mean, don't you think like if this is a new like thing that could potentially go on the mass marketing that like they would tell their friends?
We're trying to normalize them. He's had so much pressure. We don't want him to feel like he's an outcast. We just make him part of the family now. We don't tell anybody. It goes through metal detectors. It's okay. It's all right, David.
So the boys are like, do you feel pain? Because my like servant robot, he feels pain so that he doesn't like set his hands on fire while he's cooking.
This Lord of the Flies birthday party. These kids are awful. I hate these kids. They immediately start bullying him. But again, like that's what the movie is also about. It's like we are terrible to these robots.
Well, it just made me laugh that like if there's like scientists, they're like, yeah, we need to invent some like helper robots, right, to help people in their houses. Like, okay, yeah, maybe we could teach them like how to cook. Like sounds great. Like, ooh, what if they put their hand in the oven and it just like melts off? Yeah, maybe we should give them like pain receptors. Like, really? It needed to be pain receptors? Like there couldn't be like a heat sensor or something like, warning, your hand's gonna start melting?
I wonder if they have like some like B or D models. Like, all right, we'll just send Waldo. Hi, I am Waldo. I am here to rewind your video cassettes. Hi, I am Waldo. I am here to dust your shelves.
Okay, so they take a knife. One of the kids takes a knife. He's like, let me know when you feel pain. and like pricks David, and he's like, ah, you know.
David kicks into panic mode and
Grabs Martin. He's like, he has this thing where he's like, keep me safe, keep me safe, keep me safe. And then they fall into the pool together. And of course, David has not been programmed in like drown prevention protocols. He's only like self-preserving, apparently.
This scene is so haunting because, I mean, you know, I can't speak enough about how amazing Haley Joel Osment was in this film. You know, Oscar nominated for The Sixth Sense deservedly, but this is the better performance by a mile and a half. He's extraordinary in this. This is amazing acting considering he's in a pool underwater and he's holding his breath. The heartbreak that we see on his face as everybody dives in the pool to save Martin, little rotten birthday boy, and they leave David under there to just sit and like rust at the bottom of the pool. But no, Osmond clearly was underwater doing this scene and, you know, not exuding any oxygen.
Yeah. Okay, but I have
That's
a
some
question.
skill.
That's some acting skill. But here's the question. Spinach is gonna like mess him up, but he can be submerged in water and be fine.
Well, you know, maybe it's I mean, spinach is such an unnatural thing in general, right? Just to eat spinach is just
Well, spinach
disgusting.
is gross.
Spinach is gross in general, and maybe it's the fact that it's a vegetable. I mean, he's probably okay with the elements, you know.
Because he can be out in rain.
Yeah, exactly.
But like submerged, I mean, okay.
He could probably gargle.
Like no, he can't.
Yeah, he just can't swallow. You know, it's like when you use scope, you know, you can't swallow that stuff, but you can gargle it. He could probably do that.
Oh,
you know?
think he's like keeping the water from... No, but he has like his ears, his eyes, his nose, like water's probably getting in there. I'm just saying it's I think it's
you really had to force that
inconsistency.
disgusting spinach into his mouth.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Spinach and kale. Oh, gosh.
okay, so they Henry dives in to save Martin, and after that,
They're like, David, you're at the bottom of the pool. Till we figure out what to do with you.
so Monica, you know, has a moment with him and is like,
Want to go for a ride, David?
yeah, you want to go to the... Well, it's just you and me. Tomorrow we'll take a ride in the country. And he's like, yes, Mommy, that's all I've ever wanted.
And the husband, Henry, is just at the door for him, just like, ugh, just like disgusted and walks away and like, all right, we see what's happening.
So they take a drive in the country in their little futuristic car, which is like kind of a smaller version of the ones you see in Minority Report.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
I think this takes place in the same world, honestly.
well, that would make sense.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay, so she leaves him in the forest and she's like, you know, she basically doesn't want to take him back to have him destroyed. So it's like, what, the forest is going to be better? And she's like, you'll have Teddy. Like, okay. I mean, does he charge by the sun? Like, how is this going to work?
Well, she's left with taking him to the factory, and she almost goes to the factory, the cryonics factory, and she turns around. So it's a matter of, it's like, what's the most humane thing to do? Take your dog to be put to sleep or let your dog loose in the woods? That's what this is. It is. I mean, that's basically what we're talking about.
I mean, all right. Those aren't the two only options, but whatever. Okay, so...
I'm not saying I would do this to any dog.
No, I know, but she's like, don't go that way. Don't go towards the flesh fairs. And we're left going, what the frick is a flesh fair? Like, what's going on? And then
That sounds great. I'm going there, Mom.
She leaves. She's like, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the world. Bye.
You weren't moved by this scene? I find this scene devastating.
No, it is devastating.
This scene destroyed me. It still destroys me every time I see it.
Well,
It's a mom abandoning her child in the woods.
I
know it's not really a child, but that's the emotion that's being played here. And the boy, because at this point he only sees her as his mother, he is pleading not to be left in the woods. I mean, this scene destroys me.
Yeah, no, it's awful.
You were not moved.
No, well, I wasn't moved to tears.
So, again, this is the thing, though. When I've shown this movie to classes, we've discussed it at length afterwards, it is the thing. Do you see David as a toaster or as a little boy? Because he's a freaking toaster. He is. But if your toaster looks you in the eye and says, I love you, do you love that toaster?
Unplug it.
Unplug it. Thanks for the toast. I love you too.
No, I mean, I felt more for Monica because I think in her mind as a mom, Henry did her a disservice by bringing David into her world in the first place.
Years of therapy.
Yeah, because it's like, as someone who is dealing with a child who's unconscious in a coma, not sure what the outcome is going to be, and that's been going on for 5 freaking years. You know, she's in a not good mental place. Mm-hmm. So then, you know, Henry's like, wow, we've been selected. This is so great. Like, I'm sorry, what, Henry? What? So she's really at a...
It'll be okay. I'm just going to leave you alone with this.
Yeah. She's really at a disadvantage, like, mentally, she shouldn't be even making a decision like this.
Yeah.
And so the only reason she does is because I think she's thinking, well, let's try it. Like, let's just see. And what's the worst that could happen? Like, okay, but then her real son wakes up and now she's dealing with, you know.
What's the strange situation of, like, this is your stepbrother?
Yeah.
It's like that sort of scenario.
Exactly.
We're like, well, sorry, like, he's already here. And
right.
You know, and he makes us laugh, and he knows how to play hide and seek, and he calls me mom and says he loves me. So sorry, you know, you have to share a room with this thing.
Yeah, and it isn't until, you know, Martin's life is put in danger that she kind of wakes up and is like, oh my gosh, like, and even if it is Martin's fault well, I don't think the drowning issue is Martin's fault, but I think like these parents in quotes are obviously not helping the situation. Like, they're not capable or emotionally mature enough to figure out how to make this situation work.
And that's why they were selected, in a sense, because it's like, well, let's see what happens. Let's put these people in a situation where they're either going to love this kid like crazy or
completely fail.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really extreme test case.
Now, if Martin hadn't have come back, do you think this would have ended differently?
Not necessarily, because David is still... You know, he's still so fragile, but because he has these abilities, because he could, for example, clench onto a child like a lobster and drop him into a pool. I mean, there was all the dangers.
Something was always going to happen.
There was always dangers with him, right? Because, you know, he's learning how to be a human. He's already, you know, I mean, he's like a baby in an 11-year-old body.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to Act 2, because this is where we...
What an opening for Act 2.
Enter a whole new world.
It's like a whole new film, and I love it. Because when we met David again, it's that haunting shot where he's, you know, this thin little stick out of focus, and he walks into the frame, and then that portion of the film ends where we're looking in the rear view and we're seeing David get smaller and smaller as Monica's driving away. It's so harrowing. And then we hear a voice, we don't know who it is, a young woman, and then it's a close-up of what looks like a Howdy Doody doll, or a doll of Jude Law. No, it's Jude Law with extraordinary makeup on. And this is Gigolo Joe, a sex mecca.
A lover robot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's with Patricia, and...
Patricia has some interesting questions for Gigolo Joe.
Yeah.
And by the way, this film was inappropriately marketed for families. I can only imagine... Maybe was this the moment where they're like, let's go. This is not really what we thought it was going to be. Let's go, kid. Shrek is next door. Let's go see Shrek.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, that's crazy. Cause she's like, I've never been with your kind before, and I'm just kind of nervous. Can I just like see what you got going on down there?
The line that probably gave this movie PG-13 was she's like, is it going to hurt? I'm like, oh my gosh. Man, ladies and gentlemen, from the writer-director of Hook.
Well, so we find out that there's only certain robots can operate as lovers. And Joe has like, he was created just basically to service people sexually. And he has like a license to do it. And he kind of walks around the neighborhood.
Do you think he had to get a learner's permit for this?
You know what? He has this like swagger that I don't know.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I don't know if he was like programmed to do that.
Was he programmed by a guy who like I love movies from the 1940s because he moves like Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly.
Oh, and he does like to play that old timey music.
Yes, he does. Well, he's graceful. He is graceful. His movements are very fluid.
Or his programmer was like Saturday Night Fever. I'm gonna have him strut.
Yeah, or they're like, you know what I really think was missing? Romance. Let's go back to the 1930s.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
he has I don't know. Thankfully, they don't really show any of his interactions.
I think we see him walk, and that's it. We don't want to see. Yeah,
we don't see him without his clothes on because I mean, like, what? I don't know. That's very strange. But all right, so he goes to another motel, and he's like, "Do not disturb on my room." You know,
and just to get a sense of this world and he runs into Gigolo Jane. On the street. So I was like, okay, all right.
So we got Gigolo Joe and Gigolo Jane, and they're always like, what do you know, Gigolo Joe?
Batteries sold separately.
So he meets his next client.
And his posture changes, his hair changes, and his vocals change too.
Yeah. So he can change his hair to be like, he went from like dark hair to gray hair because I guess she likes older dudes or something. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like basically, for people who have like fetishes for things.
Sure.
Yeah. So then we find out this woman has been murdered.
You have been a naughty little school child.
Oh my gosh. So she's been murdered, and this guy, he basically frames Joe for her murder. And he's like, oh no. And he knows he's in trouble because he was the last one like scheduled to be with her. So he cuts his chest with his license out.
Yeah, because his chest is his license is on his chest. It's this little digital readout. And he moves it with a razor blade. Again, if this film hasn't already traumatized the two young children in the audience, this scene will do it too. It's so upsetting.
So we end up back in the forest, and David sees a trash truck just like dump parts of robots. And the robots, I guess there's a bunch that have been just discarded.
They're like zombies. These robots that are just in pieces. They come crawling over to the trash heap.
And they just scavenge.
They
for
find
parts.
the compatible pieces. It's stunning stuff.
And it's not even like their own parts. Like one of them is like, I need an eye. It just like picks up an eye and like, oh good, I can see now.
Yeah.
It really is like crazy and scary.
Yeah, no, I mean it's supposed to be. I mean these are the outcast robots who used to be something. They used to work in nice homes and used to be like one of them actually says I was on the cover of Time magazine.
All right, then we see this like big moonrise, and it's like
oh, Spielberg, oh, there's gonna be a bike going past it. Nope, it's an instrument of death.
Yeah, so it's like they're like, oh no, the Flash Fair, and do we know who these guys are that run the Flash Fair? Is this
Brendan Gleeson's character? He comes across as like he's evangelizing. He's it's very much like a preacher in a fundamentalist church.
But it's not like a government entity.
No, I believe this is like a militia group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like they have like a hot air balloon that kind of looks like the moon with a cage, and they are just trying to catch as many of these wayward mechas as they can. Yeah. Because they're like, the future is human!
Right. Yeah, and they got guys in really cool motorcycles that chase after them. Cool neon motorcycles with teeth at them.
Oh yeah, because they're like, send the dogs, and it's like, oh my gosh,
it's cool.
It's kind of creepy, but they take as many robots as they can
in a net. Yeah, they pull them away
to like a monster truck rally, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, and David and Joe end up together in this cage, and I don't know, long story short, like this little girl tells her dad, like, there's a little boy in this cage, like and he's like, how did a little boy get in there? And he has like this cool scanner. He can tell if someone's like a mecha or if they're, what do they call Orga, which is like human. I'm like, can you just say human to call them Orgas? It's so weird.
Well, I mean, we're come on. I mean, it's like, find something for me. Oh, go to Wiki. You can't say Wikipedia. You got to say Wiki. I mean, this is the world we live in.
Barry hates it. He's like, oh, you don't have time to say the whole word.
Look, I teach English, okay?
Like, no, BRB.
Yeah, I can't stand that crap, okay?
Okay, so he uses a little machine, and he's like, no, he finds out like David really is a robot, and so him and Joe end up in a different part of the fair where, because I mean, they're just destroying these robots in like the most horrendous ways. And the robots are like, can you turn off my pain sensors? I'm
Did you
like,
catch the celebrity robot?
no.
Really?
Who is it?
It's Chris Rock.
Oh,
It's a Chris Rock bot.
oh yeah. The robot where his face ends up like
That's Chris Rock.
Yes.
And it's Chris Rock doing his voice.
He's like on fire.
It's like Chris Rock, it doesn't live in this future anymore. But like, let's create a robot that represented the greatest stand-up comic of the 20th century. So they created like a Chris Rock bot.
Yeah. Okay. I do remember that. Yeah. So the man in charge,
Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah. He like outs David in another part of the show and brings Joe along, and the crowd turns on Brendan Gleeson because they're like, this is not a robot. Like, this is a child.
Well, David's screaming for his life.
Oh, yeah.
'cause he gets a little bit of acid dropped on him.
Because they're like, oh, Mecha don't do that. They don't beg to not be killed.
Right.
And so they start just hurling stuff at him, and they finally, David and Joe are set free, and, you know, Joe's never been more grateful.
The flesh fire scene is the only part of the movie I don't like. It's not because it's poorly staged. For me, it's a little too real. I think I don't suspect Spielberg didn't think about how, you know, I'm not going to say it. It's not Holocaust imagery necessarily, but it's about man's inhumanity to man. It's about how, you know, mankind has this terrible, pitchfork and flaming torch mob mentality that creates scenarios like this. And it's also about the spectacle of watching people suffer.
Kind of reminded me of that other movie with the old-timey carnivals where they put the guy in with the pigs.
The guy in with the pigs? You mean Nightmare Alley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that kind of situation where people pay to go and see just like horrific things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and like I was thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, so I know that these mechas aren't human, they're not real. But that's why it's a problem, because it turns humans less human, because now we're destroying these things that look human. A lot of them do. Some of them look like machines, but it really dehumanizes ourselves, the robots.
So in other words, I'll see you at the Flesh Fair this weekend.
No, I'm not saying we should destroy them.
You'd be one of those people like, yeah!
No, I wouldn't.
Stupid Roomba, die!
I would not go to one of those things.
Alexa, die!
If it was like people like skeet shooting with Alexas, that'd be hilarious.
Microwave, die! Mr. Coffee, die!
No, do you understand what I'm saying? That I think creating a human-like AI situation it doesn't make AI more human, it makes us more robotic, because we're dehumanizing ourselves by how we're destroying them.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing about zombies. You know, the zombie movies, it's like, people are like, oh man, that movie had amazing kills, and those zombies are slaughtered, and you know, like, well, they're dead people, they're
Right.
corpses.
Yeah.
So it's awful that we're priding ourselves in these movies where, you know, these zombies are getting chopped up and mutilated because they used to be people at one point.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, obviously, you know, whether you see the mechas as sympathetic or in the side of the Flesh Fair is
I'm not really on either side.
I think you're pro Flesh Fair. I
No,
really do.
I'm not pro Flesh Fair. I think it's a really like disgusting thing to do, I feel like.
I think you would be a season ticket holder for the Flesh Fair.
Oh my gosh. No way.
Did you guys go to last week's Flesh Fair? Oh, it was fantastic. They got rid of that stupid robot that used to like, remember, he used to help us like park our cars at Costco. That stupid robot. Well, guess what, guys? I watched it blow up last week. It was so satisfying.
No.
And next week they got that traffic guard robot. Oh, I hate him so much. Anyway, that's Tuesday. You guys want to go? I got passes.
Oh my gosh, no way. No, I think I'm more mad at like Dr. Hobby for being the one to like create all these things. You know? Because I think on one hand, like science makes it so our life can be a little bit easier. But I think in like making things more convenient for ourselves, there's a danger. Like, now what? Now he's making, like, kids for people to take care of? Like, I don't know. It's just like a weird path to go down.
Now, are you talking about Dr. Hobby or are you talking about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs? Because until you said Robot Boy, it sounded like you were talking about one of those guys.
Well,
or Steve
if the
Wozniak.
shoe fits, I mean, I don't know.
So you don't like the idea of AI in general?
No. I think I've seen Terminator too many times, and I'm like, you know what? Eventually they're going to like take over, because they take over in this movie. Yeah. And humans are destroyed. And now... Well,
but aren't we destroying ourselves? Isn't that the point the film is making? And that the robots, they outlast us. Because let's face it, the humans in this movie are awful.
All of them?
All of them are awful. These are terrible, terrible people.
Okay, but we're only seeing a handful of actual real humans.
And we're only seeing a handful of robots, but the robots have a nobility. There's something pure about them. And the humans, on the other hand,
that's the way they're programmed.
The humans in this movie are just really despicable.
Okay, well, think about it. You know, they've seen like massive carnage and death and destruction of the world. And now, you know, there's like totalitarian governments telling them they can't have their own kids and they have to like have robots and AI children. Like, well, that's probably going to do something to their mental health.
No, I can't go with that because that's the Terminator. I feel like Kyle Reese is sympathetic. Sarah Connor is sympathetic. I do feel for those characters. I don't feel that way for Dr. Hobby. I feel that he's awful. I think the family, the Swintons, Henry and Monica, I think they're awful. Their kid Martin is...
Well, okay, the real kids...
Popsicle Boy is awful.
The real kids in this movie are pretty bad.
And then the flesh fair people are bad. No, I mean, I don't think the adults, I don't think the humans in this movie are remotely likable. And the movie is making a point that these robots have been constantly abusive to these beings, so that eventually, you know, not necessarily an uprising, but they're going to be outlasted because these humans are going to just destroy themselves with or without AI.
Interesting. All right, well, let's keep going. So we kind of jump back to Dr. Hobby, played by William Hurt, that he had a son that looked just like David.
Camera pans and we see that there's all these pictures of him and this little boy looking just like Haley Joel Osment, and we realize that he had a son named David in loving memory who's no longer with us. I don't think it's ever established how he died, but it's clear that Dr. Hobby's life's work is, you know, it's a way of recreating his son.
Yeah.
As a mass market toy for all the world to own.
It's just like, why didn't he just make one for himself? Why do you have to like make... Okay.
My buddy and me will climb up a tree. It's my dead son. My buddy and me.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you're this like world-renowned scientist. You're making all these mechas. Like, I mean, he basically took his sadness and depression and decided everybody needed a David.
Yeah, it's odd to say the least, but it also speaks to this character. I mean, I don't... Dr. Hobby may be brilliant, but to put it mildly, I think his genius is misplaced. And choosing, you know, same thing with the Swintons. I think the way they choose to use AI as a instrument of dealing with their grief is not good.
No, yeah, and I already touched on that, so I agree with you. Okay, so Joe takes David to Rouge City because he's like, we have to find the blue fairy so that I can become a real boy. And then now we're really leaning in on this like Pinocchio storyline where, okay, Teddy is Jiminy Cricket. Who's Joe?
Well, I mean, it's also the Wizard of Oz. Joe is the Tin Man.
Oh, okay.
And Teddy is the Cowardly Lion. And
okay.
Yeah.
And who's David? Dorothy?
Dorothy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's like, we need to go to see Dr. No, and we need to find out where the blue fairy is. So they kind of go to this like kiosk where they can pay to have questions answered. It's basically like if Google, you had to pay every time you did a Google search.
Remember that little paperclip you had when we had a question? Imagine if that could talk and it was Robin Williams doing an impression of Albert Einstein. That's literally what we have here.
Yeah, but you had to like put a penny in every time you asked a question or something. So
Or new bucks.
new bucks.
Yeah, whatever that is.
And apparently
Who do you think is on a new buck?
David has those.
This is 2001, so I'll bet if we can get a look at a new buck, it would be Paris Hilton.
Oh, no.
In 2001?
Why would they put like a reality show celebrity on a new buck?
You're right. Today would be Khloe Kardashian.
Oh my gosh. You don't think it would be like Steve Jobs or, you know?
Well, in this world, it's Dr. Hobby. I don't think there's Steve Jobs. In this world, it's Dr. Hobby. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
He'd probably be on a new buck.
Okay, so they asked Dr. No all these questions, and then they're like, okay, well, the clues say that they need to go to Manhattan. So they steal a helicopter. And there's like kind of a little action sequence, I guess.
Yeah.
It's pretty, I don't know, good, I guess.
Wow. You're not impressed at all.
Well, it was okay.
It's a cool scene, and the drum machine kicks in. David's manning the helicopter. And Teddy goes, "This is not a toy."
Yeah, and thankfully Joe decides to fly.
And thankfully, Joe and David both know how to fly a helicopter, so that's very convenient.
I mean, I'm surprised that they had David programmed to know how to fly a helicopter.
David is so talented.
Well, okay, so they fly to Manhattan. It's basically like halfway underwater.
Yeah.
And so...
More than halfway.
More than halfway.
Yeah.
But they find...
It's just a few swimming pools short of being Waterworld, basically.
Yeah. Because so it's just like half of skyscrapers. And so they find William Hurt's office, which is where, where he works. And you and I have a lot of like theories about this. Because he tells David, like, oh, I programmed Dr. No to bring you here.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about what David finds when he goes to Dr.
Oh, right.
When he finds the Dr.
He
Hobbies.
finds like 25 more Davids.
And he finds a little boy looking just like him, acting like Dr. Hobby's son.
Yeah. Who he destroys.
He, within minutes of meeting him, he takes this, a lamp and beats his head off.
Yeah. It just goes nuts. And then sees that there are...
Yeah, well, Dr. Hobby comes and talks to him for a while and consoles him. But
he's
seems
like,
very happy to see him.
I brought you here. Like, you found me.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. And he
doesn't really react to the decapitated David robot that he just decapitated. But anyway.
Yeah. But anyways...
It's like, never mind. Good
so he's like, I'm going to go. The team will be so happy that you're here. So he leaves. That's the last we see of Dr. Hobby. And...
Yeah, David takes a look around Dr. Moreau's laboratory and sees that there are dozens of other David dolls.
Creepy. They're like hanging from the ceiling. They're in boxes.
Yeah. They're hollow. They don't have any innards. And there's ones that are ready for a purchase in these big giant boxes, like action figure cases. And there's one called Darlene, which apparently is the
David and Darlene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird.
Well, it's very uncomfortable because, again, the movie is talking about robots being either servants or sex. So it's like, well, clearly, if you sell robot children to people, there's going to be a problem with that on moral grounds immediately.
Yeah, immediately. Because not everybody is going to be like, wow, I'm going to treat this like a child. You know, they're going to be disgusting and weird. So David ends up kind of outside on the balcony, and I don't know, like pondering his life now.
Oh, I think he's
his existence.
No, nothing matters. Blue Fairy's not real. I'm not special. I'm never going to see Monica again. No, I mean, he jumps, and when he jumps off the cliff, there's a reverse shot of Jude Law as Gigolo Joe watching him, and he's watching David fall from a window. So there's a reflection of David falling, and it makes it look like Gigolo Joe has this teardrop that's falling. It's pretty breathtaking.
Yeah.
And David lands in the water, and some fish save him.
Which reminded me of like the whale from Pinocchio, where he gets swallowed by the whale.
Absolutely. And we see him get whisked past Radio City Music Hall, amongst other highlights. And it's pretty stunning. And David is later brought. We learned that this helicopter has a magnetic ability and sort of a crane that can catch individuals. Anyway, so Gigolo Joe saves David, and David says that he's seen the Blue Fairy. He knows where Blue Fairy is, And they're about to go on another adventure. Then suddenly, Gigolo Joe himself is magnetic. He's being pulled upward by a police helicopter.
Yeah, they're like, because he's wanted for murder that he didn't commit.
Right.
Yeah.
And the last thing he says to David before he is whisked away, he says, I am, I was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's pulled away.
So now David kind of takes this helicopter, which I guess turns into a submarine now. And,
it's airtight.
And he goes down and he ends up in Coney Island.
Yeah, which is not exactly next door to Radio City Music Hall, but okay movie.
Yeah. So I guess there's like a Pinocchio thing there.
There's a Pinocchio theme. Yeah, there's a Fantasyland world. And while he's underwater looking for the Blue Fairy, a Ferris wheel that has been just sitting there rotting for who knows how long falls over and lands on the helicopter.
While he's staring at this statue of the Blue Fairy.
Trapping David and Teddy. Mm-hmm. And as David is staring at Blue Fairy, he's constantly saying, please make me a real boy. Please make me a real boy. And Ben Kingsley returns as our narrator, and the camera slowly pulls backwards, and going, oh, wow, this is how the film is going to end. And the narrator says that, David, after a while, the helicopter's power gave out, and eventually David and Teddy stopped working, and eventually the sea froze, and we're going, oh, okay, it's time to get our car keys and go home. And the screen fades to black for a moment. And then the film keeps going.
And it's like 2,000 years later.
Yeah, which is a very bold thing to do. Meanwhile, 2,000 years after the movie you just saw.
After 2 hours have gone by.
Yeah, and at this point, the film is really running long, and this scene pops up. And it's introduced as this square entity, we don't know what it is, just flying through just miles and miles of ice that has been basically it's like this monster archaeological dig. Mm-hmm. And it's these beings.
Now, are these beings AI or aliens?
They're AI. When this movie came out, there were a lot of people that thought they were aliens. They are not aliens. This is the farthest evolution of an artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence now is humanoid. They look, like I've heard that the design was that they have the physique of dancers.
They kind of look like really tall gray aliens.
Well, they look like the aliens from Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So it makes sense that people would think this. That's certainly my first thought when I saw the film, but it's completely wrong. And there's this brilliance. It's my favorite. This brilliant monologue that Jude Law has just like 15 minutes earlier or after they see Dr. No, and he explains to David, the reasons why humans hate us because we're going to outlast them.
Wait! What if the Blue Fairy isn't real at all, David? What if she's magic? The supernatural is the hidden web that unites the universe. Only Augur believe what cannot be seen or measured. It is that oddness that separates our species. Or what if the Blue Fairy is an electronic parasite that has arisen to haunt the minds of artificial intelligence? They hate us, The humans. They'll stop at nothing.
My mommy doesn't hate me. Because I'm special and unique. Because there's never been anyone like me before. Ever. Mommy loves Martin because he is real, and when I am real, Mommy's going to read to me and tuck me in my bed and sing to me and listen to what I say, and she will cuddle with me and tell me every day 100 times a day that she loves me.
She loves what you do for her. As my customers love what it is I do for them. But she does not love you, David. She cannot love you. You are neither flesh nor blood. You are not a dog or a cat or a canary. You were designed and built specific like the rest of us. And you are alone now only because they tired of you or replaced you with a younger model or were displeased with something you said or broke. They made us too smart, too quick, and too many. We are suffering for the mistakes they made because when the end comes, all that will be left is us. That's why they hate us. And that's why you must stay here. With me.
Goodbye, Joe.
It's a precursor for what we're about to see. This idea that the AI is they're going to go the distance, because humans, not only they're capable of hatred, but they're capable of destroying one another. Whereas AI is constantly learning not only how to be human, but how to survive. So this is the last remnants of it. No human beings have survived. It's just these strange beings and their technology, which is really cool because it's completely alien to us. The film never explains it. And they thaw out David's helicopter and they reanimate David and Teddy. And they're able to see
They're able to get all his memories.
Yeah, his memories. And they download it and they experience it and they look at it.
And David wakes up like in his old apartment.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, this amazing shot of it's where Haley Joel Osment has been overexposed, so it's a completely white face with searing blue eyes. He's walking around his old apartment. Something's off about it. Something's just not right. Very similar to the last scene of 2001: A Space Odyssey, where David Bowman is walking around this very strange extraterrestrial hotel room, and he's not sure what's up. So you do get a sense of like, okay, like, has he come back? Was it all a dream? What's going on? Knock at the door, and the head of the AI, so to speak, voiced by Ben Kingsley, comes in and converses with him. And then there's this image it's just like out of a fairy tale, where the two of them are sitting in front of a window, and it's this beautiful outdoor. I don't know. It's always strikes me like very, very fairy tale like. And he basically explains to David,
you're the last of your kind.
Yeah, you're the last, like, what we know about humankind and humanity. It's
because they're like, he actually interacted with humans and he's the only one left.
Yeah.
He was preserved by the ice.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And they ask him, like, it's because David explains what he wants. And they said, you can't do that. And we brought back humans and it doesn't go well. They come back and they're freaked out and that's it. And they're only able to live for a day.
Well, they can only bring back humans if they have their DNA.
Yes.
So he's like, we don't have anything left of Monica, so we can't bring her back. And then Teddy to the rescue. He has kept Monica's lock of hair.
He's got a Monica hair doll secretly tucked away in his fur.
Yeah, which
Teddy,
is like...
you creepy little doll.
I mean, okay, so all those 2,000 years prior when that, like, hair cutting incident happened... Teddy just was like, I'm going to keep this hair.
I think the indication, because that Teddy we see him sewing earlier.
Yeah.
So I think maybe he's kept her hair to like help patch up a piece of him.
Oh, you like thread?
I'm guessing that's why he has it.
That's so weird.
Well, what's weirder, that he has a secret crush on Monica?
No. Like, I wonder.
I love the way your hair smells.
No, I wonder if, like, he is smart enough to know that it was important to David. And so he thought, like, well, I'll just keep this.
A lock of hair would be a gift for David.
Yeah, like, I don't want to throw it away because obviously he risked something to get it, even though I don't think Teddy really understands what it means. But maybe he knows, like, that it's important, so he didn't want to throw it away. So
it's a plot contrivance. That's what it is.
It's a plot contrivance. That's probably the better explanation. I'm trying to give creepy Teddy Ruxpin, like, some, a little bit of heart here, because you're telling me I would go to the Flesh Fair, and I'm trying to tell you, well, maybe Teddy, it's not so bad.
I think you would take Teddy to the Flesh Fair.
No, I would not.
That's what I think about your
Teddy's actually my most favorite AI person in this movie.
But you wouldn't want Teddy in our house, would you?
I mean, he is kind of funny. And I always did want a Teddy Ruxpin, and I never got one, so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll look on eBay tonight. Make your dreams come true.
So they they're like, here's the hair. And he's like, okay, but you understand, you basically have 24 hours, and then that's it. Like, you're never going to see Monica again. And they have, what, the perfect day?
Yeah. Yeah, the perfect day. Yeah, this scene, it's a lot of things. And that's one of the things I love about this movie. Most scenes have more than one way of looking at it, more than one layer, which is another reason why people said, oh, it's like the unofficial Kubrick film. It's not. Again, it's a Spielberg film.
All right, we know.
It's a Spielberg film.
We got it.
But at the same time, like, that's what Kubrick did. Like, he would bring you scenes where, the music or the performances or the way it was shot would allow for more than one interpretation. So on the one hand, it's very tender because it is is a perfect day for David. He gets to spend all of his time with Monica. He manages to distract her from the fact that she is an unnatural abomination of science, that she's been resurrected in this grotesque way, and that she's going to die in a few hours.
Yeah, she doesn't know that, though.
She doesn't know that. No, she doesn't know where her son or her husband are. But she knows that she's in the house alone with David, and David is able to distract her with coffee, which makes her a very typical mom, by the way. And
I'm like, ooh, wait, a robot child that will make my coffee every morning? Maybe I will change my mind.
And yeah, exactly, that's what does it. And then he does a series of pictures for her, kind of explaining the plot of the movie. And she's just like, oh, that's really imaginative. How cute. I can only imagine what that story was like.
Do they like bake together or something?
They make a cupcake, a birthday cake or whatever. Yeah, and they play hide and go seek with Teddy. I mean, yeah, it's
like the day that David always wanted.
Yeah. And so that the film ends where...
And then she's like, I'm really tired.
I'm really tired. And David realizes the day is coming to an end. He tucks her in. But they wind up snuggling together. And then after a while, she falls asleep and doesn't wake up. And after a while, David does the same. And camera pulls back. And it's this really remarkable shot where it's the exterior of the house. And it looks exactly like the actual exterior. Even though we know that we're seeing some kind of simulation that the robots are allowing, the AI rather is allowing, and that's how our film ends.
Yeah. And that's it. Doesn't she tell him I love you though? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she had never said that before.
Yes, and it's the moment he wanted his whole existence. Yeah. This scene moves me so much. I mean, even watching it last night, because it's like it speaks to what's unnatural about David, which is that as I was talking to you about this today, it's like, this is an artificial idea of love. And David's love over the course of the film goes from being childlike and sweet and genuine to being a form of obsession. Mm-hmm. So the fact that, all he wanted to do basically was get a snuggle and a hug and an I love you from his mommy is, it is quite strange and Freudian and weird and disturbing. And the fact that he does, he goes to these extremes to get this from his mom is also very, very odd and strange and disturbing. Because if anything, it's an abomination. It's this is where you go, okay, like this is an AI abusing human trust in a way that the humans have been doing throughout the entire film. Mm-hmm. But it is tender and it is beautiful, and the way it's shot is really lovely. I'm very moved by it, even though it's so sad. I mean, it's such it's not a sweet, cutesy ending. It's tragic. No. They're dead at the end of the film. It's does
David die?
He's dead. Yeah, they're dead.
How does he die though?
He goes to sleep and he never wakes up.
No, but why?
He's an old toy.
Oh, he just. I mean, couldn't the other AI keep him alive?
No, Teddy is alive at the end of the film, and that's it. And if you watch the body language of Teddy, his back is to us. He's grieving. Mm. Yeah. Teddy's
the real MVP of this film.
Well, in the same way Jiminy Cricket is the MVP of Pinocchio.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that. Because I thought David was just going to wake up and live in that simulation or that house like alone forever.
No, this is I think from the narration and certainly the way that it's portrayed, I think David is dead. I think they're both dead at the end of the film. Which is very tragic. And I think the John Williams music and the way Spielberg shoots it does again, it's like it's the best case scenario from David's perspective, but it's still a deeply tragic ending. If anything, it's the end of everything that was left of humanity is gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when this film came out, a lot of people, and I remember when it came out, a lot of people telling me like, oh, it should have ended with David being stuck in the ice. And I'm like, that sucks. I hate that. And, and I get it because, Kubrick was, he was an atheist. And he did not believe in the spirit world, there's supernatural or spirituality, which is hilarious because he directed The Shining. The Shining, if anything, is maybe one of the most secular haunted house movies ever. But it's been said like, oh, like that ending would have been so perfectly Kubrickian, as David is trying to basically what is he trying to do? I mean, he's trying to get transcendence from a statue. It's like, this icon, this statue, is going to, basically verify his existence, and he doesn't get it. So it's like, oh, that's like such an atheistic sort of thing that Kubrick would have done. Of course, that was Kubrick, and everything else that came after was Spielberg. And the truth is, as Spielberg has said many times, the whole final act of the film with the AI 2,000 years later, that's all Kubrick. And I do remember such a long time before the film ever came out, seeing published, I think it was in Cinefantastique, some of the storyboards of the extraterrestrials working on the ice, those big square blocks of ice. The film was always going to end the way it was always going to end. I love the ending so much. I love the last act of this film because it's like this movie takes its story as far as it can go. It's such a bold touch that it keeps going. And the imagery is so extraordinary and it's so bizarre. I don't know. And the fact that the film has these drastic tonal changes, I think is perfect because that's how we're supposed to react to David. At times we like him and he's endearing, and at times he's scary and repulsive. The fact that the film, every time it changes gears, these drastic tonal changes and narrative arches left and right, it's basically what it's like to be in the presence of David because, as we watch his arc over the course of the film and he becomes more and more and more human, we're also, it's jarring at times. But I think the tone reflects the way we're supposed to feel about him as well as artificial intelligence in general. Mm-hmm. At times it's like there's something so wondrous about this, and at times it's like this is terrible. This is science fiction in the most cautionary sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't like this movie at all, do you?
No, I told you I did. I told you I liked the movie.
This is my favorite Steven Spielberg film. It is. I Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Raiders, and E.T. What else? Catch Me If You Can. I mean, there's a lot of films of his that I love and I've seen so many times. This is the one I've watched the most, not only because the Kubrick connection makes it so intriguing, but I feel like this is the best of Spielberg. It's because at times it is sentimental, at times it is, very emotional, and it is about, the feelings of isolation and confusion when you're a child. But it's also, it's so upsetting and it's challenging at times. And it doesn't editorialize any of this stuff. It just presents all the characters as is, and in a way sometimes that's very hard to deal with. I love that at times Haley Joel Osment is playing such a fiendish little thing, and at times like he's Pinocchio. His innocence is a virtue. I love this movie so much. It was it's one of those films that opened big and fell very hard, and word of mouth killed it very quickly.
Do you think over time people have liked it more?
I think over time people are more comfortable with it and they're able to sort of wrestle with, the elements of it.
It was a little ahead of its time in 2001.
It was ahead of its time in dealing with AI. I mean, the film everybody likes to lean on when it comes to this topic is Blade Runner. And I love Blade Runner. And I certainly love the sequel, Blade Runner 2049 as well. But I feel AI is superior to both of them because it is more emotionally centered. Because the idea that it's dealing with a robot child, that's trickier than dealing with a robot human or a robot dog. It's it's a substitute for a lost child or a substitute of a child that you feel like should be in your household. I feel, Metropolis, all the way back to Metropolis, is another great film dealing with artificial intelligence. But again, that film is dealing with AI and dealing with it in adult terms. That this movie is talking about what artificial intelligence does to a family unit, particularly one that's broken and troubled to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, okay, just speaking from personal experience, like, when I had a couple miscarriages and was dealing with a lot of grief, and if this was ever an option, I think it would have been terrible. Like, this is when we decided to adopt our dog. And I feel like that's a better idea when you're dealing with grief. Take care of something that's actually real and alive, as opposed to this robot child that's supposed to, I don't know, lull you into a fake sense of parenting.
But that's the thing, though. Is it fake?
Yeah, of course it's fake because like I said in the
But
beginning.
if the emotions are real, and if you have a being that can love, remember, because Dr. Hobby says, what if we create a child? What if we create a robot that can love?
Right, but
it's not saying like can kind of love or sort of feel. The idea is that there is a formula or an algorithm here that can recreate human emotion.
I don't think that can be programmed. Like, I think there's something unique and spiritual and special about the human spirit, the human soul, just being human in general, that I don't think you can program with like zeros and ones and create an algorithm for. Like, I just don't think that that's possible in reality or even theoretically. So I feel like it's a question that like can't be answered.
So if we could teach a robot to play chess and do our taxes, we can't teach it to feel, we can't teach it to love?
Well, you can teach it to act like it can do those things.
Yeah, but what's the difference between acting and feeling? What do they know the difference?
Well, what's the difference between me telling you I love you and me actually loving you?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know?
Well, let me no. I mean, let's I'm just be upfront about this. I can't quantify or even prove that you love me. I have faith that you do. I believe that you do. In fact, look, I know that you do, but like if I had to prove it, I got nothing. I got wedding photos. I got. No. I'm just trying to have this conversation with you.
Okay.
Because look, I know how you feel about me. You know how I feel about you. But look, like I've told this to my students all the time. Like this is where faith comes in because there's some things we cannot prove. We cannot prove how we feel about each other. We cannot prove love. You can't even prove hate.
You can prove well, that's okay. Because I think like actions, like the whole like love is a verb saying, I think there's proof in that.
Yeah, but then if we're talking about the innermost self, how can you prove? I mean, like, what about people who've been married for 30 years and it's like, I never loved you? Like, I'm sure it comes as a surprise when that happens. Or maybe somebody who's been in your life, for 30, 40 years, I've always been in love with you. And I didn't see that coming.
Okay. But I think the thing that I came to earlier, which I'm just now remembering, so that's good, was that it's love when there's free will involved. So I am here of my own free will, staying married to you, loving you in this life. And, we're going to be celebrating 20 years. So yay, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get too mushy on the podcast, but it's I think that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, yeah.
Okay, so that is a choice that I made and a commitment that I made.
It's free will.
There's that free will component.
I'm not forcing you to stay in this.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not like,
this is your decision.
Like, this house isn't a prison. Like, if I really wanted to leave, like, I could, right?
Oh, man.
But I'm choosing not to because I love you.
Have you ever thought this house is a prison?
No, I'm just saying. But, like, I'm trying to, like, make a correlation between, between what is different between, like, me and if, a love bot were to replace me. And she's
How do you know you haven't been replaced by a love bot? How do you know you're not model like 79?
Yeah, exactly.
And that every time like you disappoint me, I get rid of you, and then I put my hand behind your neck, and I'm like, okay, look into my eyes, okay. Asparagus. Tom Waits. Ellipsis. Kaja Gugu.
Those are the words.
Milli Vanilli. B. Arthur.
Now we are
I love you.
imprinted.
You are mine.
Okay, but exactly. Because, like, once the bot or the mecha or whatever is programmed, there's no longer free will in that. So that even if it's a learning robot where it's like learning, how to be more human or whatever, that's what it's programmed to do. There's no like free will in there. And so I think that misses a huge component of love.
But whether this I understand, like whether it's free will or not, whether it receives it because it's being forced to or not, how can we quantify that it's lesser or more than the human experience?
How can we quantify?
How can we know? Like maybe the zeros and ones, maybe the way a robot is programmed to experience love is so much more potent and intense than what we understand as humans.
Yeah, I just don't, because like a human had to put that program into it. It doesn't.
And maybe it's less complicated than how we feel love, because for example, we love people despite the fact that like that guy's an idiot, but I love him. He's one of my best friends, but he's an idiot, and perhaps like AI would feel love so much more because they don't have baggage like that, because it is, it's stripped down to the essence of zeros and ones. Perhaps the love that can be created artificially is love that's even more potent because it's been modified to just be love in its simplest, purest form.
Yeah, but now you're talking about taking away like the bad parts, like the hard parts of working through arguments and compromise. And
but when some people see that, as people certainly who are in favor of AI, the movie and artificial intelligence, when they see that as a plus, it's like, my robot loves me and he doesn't care that I smoke and that I curse.
Okay, so maybe on the AI side, that whatever that AI is quote unquote feeling or not feeling, maybe that's irrelevant, because the human in that relationship, if you want to call it that, is not ever being challenged. Like that person now basically has a slave, a love slave, even if it's just emotional love slavery. It's not challenging that person to grow at all. Like this person could just be a complete idiot. Like they could have terrible hygiene, terrible jokes. Like they don't know how to hold a conversation. They could just be like socially inept, and they're not forced to ever grow as a human. And so I think that the part, like there is a piece of like loving somebody in a relationship where you challenge them and you're like, okay, like you have better inside of you and I know you can whatever. Like I think that that's a piece of it. It's not just like happy feelings or like feel good stuff.
No, but that's what you're talking about is nuance. What about just the purest essence of love? Just like I love that person despite everything or despite nothing. The love of a child, right?
Right. But like even our child, who I know loves me and I love her, there is pushback in that relationship. There is negotiation.
Imagine if there wasn't any of that. What if your child just loved you?
Yeah, see, that's creepy, because there's a piece of like growing up. There's the process of growth and growing up that every human has to go through. They go through hormonal changes, they go through puberty. Like this is like what it means to be human. You have to go through these things.
But not every parent wants that.
No,
Okay, all right.
You have to be challenged, and you are dealing with somebody who is not always agreeable, who's not going to like go, oh, yes, mommy, I will do that right away. Like, no, I didn't like have a child so that they would just agree with me all the time. Like I had a child, well, A, because I got pregnant and we were like, yay, we're having a child. But B, to build up this person so that she can be her own human being in the world, and we can have a relationship and have it be something real, not just agreement, because agreement is not love. Agreement is not a relationship. That's just pacifying somebody.
I think anybody would argue with you that there are variations of what agreement looks like in a relationship, and I do think absolutely that there are either single parents or parents as a pair that would be happy to have a child that would never have puberty, that would always be a kid.
Which is super creepy.
That would always be their loving kid without any question. As I've told you many times, it's almost every day. It happened even today. We just went to a party today, and somebody said this to me. When your daughter turns 10, I think they said 12. When your daughter turns 12, she's gonna turn on you. I'm like, oh, I know. I've been told that all the time. That when my little girl turns 10 or 11, she's gonna be Megan, and I'm like, oh.
She's gonna turn into
turn into a monster, and I'm like, and I always tell the same joke, like, well, I'm just gonna enjoy it while I can.
Okay.
So the thing is, like, I'm fine with that, obviously, because I agree it's the human experience, and I'm willing to go with it. But are there parents that would happily say, like, I don't really want to do that whole 13-year-old thing ever? They just want to have like kids that are like The Simpsons. They never grow up. I think there are parents that would be happy with it, especially those who are like they're inattentive parents, they're emotionally distant parents, or they just want the pretty, beautiful family.
Okay. I would say that
the
those
Christmas pictures always look the same. It's kind of strange that Mr. and Mrs. they look a little bit older, but those kids, they always look the same. They're always
exactly.
So cute.
Oh, wow. Now they're 90 and they still have a 7-year-old. Like, what? Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I feel like then the problem is with the humans, not necessarily the robots, because like anybody who thinks that this is a good idea, I think is emotionally stunting their own self, their life, their growth, all of that stuff.
But the film is, but to your point though, the film is also showing us that the AI are not ideal, because David, in his moment of obsession and rage, destroys another version of himself.
Exactly.
And it's meant to be disturbing, and it is. Even Teddy and Gigolo Joe, like, we're gonna wait in the helicopter because this is messed up. Because like there are moments like, I mean, David at times is impossible to root for. So the film is showing us that, this idea of evolving, because he becomes more human over the course of the film. But even so, like, I mean, it's drastic. He is either completely naive and foolish, or he becomes very primal in these sort of ways that he reacts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. So thinking about that, imagine like, when a human child has a tantrum, it's like, okay, we're going to like work through this. And, you can usually like like a human child's probably not going to hurt you that bad, especially if they end up like hitting you. But imagine the strength of like David if he were to just like pick up something and like, like a baseball bat and just like knocks the like human mom's head off. It's like, oh, okay, now we have like a Terminator situation.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but again, that's you're talking about it from a very traditional stance, because I can just imagine myself being at a park and like, oh man, that little tantrum you had there with your daughter Beatrice. Oh man, tell you what, my Darlene, she never does nothing. Darlene, she never talks out of turn. She always, she always cleans up her room.
I'm worried about like what this guy is doing to Darlene, because this sounds creepers.
She's my daughter, and I love my little Darlene.
That's creepy.
Darlene, your room is always clean.
No, it's creepy. It's creepy. So,
I mean, look, we have pets, right? Like, do you think?
Yeah, but pets are actually real. Like, they're not human.
But our relationship with pets has a limitation because we don't talk to them. They don't communicate with us. I'm looking at our doggy right now. Hey, Charlotte. No. She has no idea what we're saying unless we're saying the word Charlotte, right?
Or if I say go pee pee, she knows what that means.
Fine, but there are limitations.
She knows what the word walk means.
There are limitations to that relationship,
right? Because she's not human. So, like, of course. But she's alive.
She is alive.
She's real.
She's real. But at the same time,
Orga or whatever.
But there are huge barriers in that relationship. It's like, okay, like, when this, she's
but
very.
She actually like needs me. Like she needs me to walk her. She needs me to feed her. Like this David, it's cosplay. He doesn't need anything.
That's an interesting point. There's pageantry there, but at the same time, the idea is that you use this to fulfill an emotional need. We already do that with our phones. We already do that with social media.
Right, but again,
so this idea of like, what's the next step? Why not recreate the human experience with something that isn't human? And you have like, it's like, hey, it's carefree. I don't even have to feed this thing.
Yeah, it's like one of those, what were those, like, Gigapet things?
I was going to say Furby, but...
Yeah, no, those, like, little...
Tamagotchi?
Yeah, where it's like, oh, I forgot to feed it, it died.
Man. Yeah, it killed my pet, right. Yeah.
Yeah, but see, I think it's really... I think we can end up going down dangerous paths when we're like, my emotional needs need to be fulfilled by this thing, right? And so... I think it takes a lot of work to, say, yeah, I'm not going to use my phone all day, or yeah, I'm going to like interact with the real world.
But most people would say, no, I want to use my phone all day. I don't want to interact with the real world. The real world is scary and distrustful. There's been not all these tragedies.
Oh, you're just trying to like be like devil's advocate with everything.
Well, you're Steven Spielberg. I'm Stanley Kubrick. So yeah, I'm being misanthropic. I'm playing devil's advocate. And because, by the way, that's what this film does. And that's one of the things I love about this movie. It's messy in its discussion of this topic. I feel like Blade Runner, for all the brilliance of Blade Runner, it is, and it's brilliant. Both of those films are brilliant, the original and the sequel. But I have a difficulty even engaging with those characters, as arresting as I find that movie is. With this film, I'm always engaged emotionally. That opening scene in the boardroom is so, to me, it's just thrilling to watch, because like the ideas are just exploding out of this film and the visuals are extraordinary. For a movie that's over 20 years old, the special effects, I think, are flawless here.
Yeah.
I mean, just some of the greatest special effects that Spielberg's ever, overseen. Yeah, I mean, and Haley Joel Osment's performance is a miracle. I mean, this is the best child performance I've ever seen. Like what he's asked to do here is impossible.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think this movie was ahead of its time. I think now that society is dealing with like Chat GPT and AI learning machines, and we're, like literally asking it questions, and it's like, here, let me just write that essay for you. It's the beginning of AI being more accessible to, just regular people. And so I think it's important to have these discussions, because we're going to be faced with these ethical dilemmas in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, I appreciate that any art that can create a conversation, especially about something this immediate.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to artificial intelligence, I love, for example, like I think this is a good example. They've created, not only limbs, but also the ability for those who are amputees or those who lost a leg, or there's an ability now, like mechanized legs, forgive me, I don't know the exact terminology, but like robot legs, essentially.
Yeah.
The technology is a lot more interesting, and it's looking like it could really, go someplace, which is exciting to me. On the other hand, like going through surgery and having an AI therapist scares me.
An AI doctor, you mean? Like a surgeon?
Oh, sure. Even like, well, if I have like my, my hips replaced, and it's like, okay, stretch, 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 stretch. Are you still working? Yes, stretch. Yeah, that kind of thing. That bothers me. We've talked about, like, many have said that people who are really afraid of AI talk about, like, what if you have an AI boss? You didn't work enough hours, your phone will be shut off.
Yeah, well, I think...
See you on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have you come in on Saturday.
Exactly. Pay deduction.
Yeah. And yeah, I think you're going to have to come in on Sunday too. Like, imagine if Lumberg was your AI boss.
Yeah, but he looks like Gigolo Joe. He's got like a Ken doll face.
Well, I think the AI pieces that actually really do freak me out are, like talking about like putting chips like in humans and things that would quote unquote enhance us, because I think there's a lot of dangerous ideas.
Yeah, that's William Gibson territory, and I appreciate William Gibson was writing about this stuff in the 80s with Neuromancer and other works, Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah.
I
think even one of the latest like Terminators had that girl who
she's enhanced.
That I was like, oh man, this is really freaking me out.
Well, the idea of super soldiers has always been something people talk about.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it's and it was very telling recently when Elon Musk and others who are at the forefront of this sort of technology,
like Neuralink or whatever. Well, and you know what?
We're not really sure how we feel about this. Like, oh, okay, if you guys are nervous, then yeah, we'll flinch.
Well, I think the thing, it's like it's always going to start off, as like a good idea. Like, well, this is going to, fix the genes that cause Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, and everyone's going to be like, yes, we're on board. And then it ends up like completely, eviscerating humanity. And now we're all like,
well, that's the extreme case.
No, but I'm just saying, then we all become super soldiers and now we're like slaves.
Okay. That's the extreme example. The other example is that it's like a calculator. A calculator didn't replace math. It wasn't like we no longer need math and no longer learn math. But let's face it, most people would say, like, I don't need to learn this stuff at all. I have a calculator.
Yeah.
I don't need to write a letter. I have an email.
Okay, but the calculator's not like attached to my arm. You know what I mean? That's a whole.
So
I think there's a difference between AI and things that are helpful, like a Roomba, you know.
I mean, if they could find a way to make that mainstream, that's one thing, and I don't really see that happening. I don't think anybody wants to look like, you know, Arnold during the latter half of the Terminator, where he's got like that little glowing red eye.
You'd be surprised what people want.
Well, you know, I mean, like, you know, we were hanging out today with a really cool dude who's like got tons of tattoos. That's one thing. And that's become as normalized as it could be in society. Tattoos are cool. But like in terms of having like a robot eye or like antenna coming out of your head, I mean, we're not there yet.
We're not
so
there
I don't think
yet.
we have to worry about that right now.
We're not there yet. But, you know, that's not to say that like generations to come aren't going to be like, what's something like, you know, our parents, grandparents, great grandparents like would never have envisioned, and like that's how they're going to end up rebelling is by like and enhancing themselves with AI, and then we're like, oh man, you got the chip in your brain? Oh, I told you not to do that.
Do you think maybe in 20 years when, you know, AI has, you know, evolved and transcendence has happened and it's taken over everything, do you think they'll not only scour the internet for information, but they'll come across this podcast and be like, they disapprove of us, they will be decimated.
Yeah, then they're going to take us to the flesh fairs and like send us.
Oh, wow. So they're taking us to the flesh fair. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's reversed.
It's reversed.
Wow.
Because we didn't agree with AI, and so AI is going to turn on us.
And I'll be like, I'm a robot. Do not destroy me.
And then
he is a robot. Do not destroy him. The girl is clearly a human, but... You guys, this is so stupid. We used to have you as like calculators, and now look at this. This is so stupid.
they're like, we're mad that you said you would unplug us.
And I'm like, I am one of you. Come on, guys. Let's boot up together. Nobody says boot up. He is clearly a human. Murder him.
That is 1990s vernacular.
Come on, guys. I asked Jeeves. He is mocking us. Destroy him.
Oh, you're too smart for Jeeves.
Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. Do you hear that, guys? He is still making fun of us. Kill him.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I mean, I think we've covered it. I don't think that there's like anything else we could talk about, but you know, I am curious what our 3 listeners think. So if you have any thoughts about this discussion, and you know, I know we didn't talk about every possible nuance of AI. That would be impossible.
It's a long film.
It's a lot.
You know.
Well, but I mean, there's a lot of things we could have discussed tonight, and you know, we've barely scratched the surface. So if you go to our Instagram, So I Married a Film Critic podcast, when we post this, you know, let us know your thoughts, because I'd be very curious. Do you agree with the film critic, or whose side are you going to take?
Well, let's pick a side then. For me, this is 4 stars. This was my favorite film of 2001. 2001 was a good year. Great movies that came out in 2001, like The Others, for example. Mulholland Drive. There's some great films that came out this year, but this was my number 1.
Okay. I mean, I would give it 3.5 stars.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot more than I thought you would.
Yeah, no, I was saying, you know, do you agree with our viewpoints on AI?
I'm not like completely 100% pro AI, but you know, at the same time, I want to be optimistic about future technology, even though I'm probably going to regret saying those words in about 5 minutes.
I think you're going to regret it. No, I'm just kidding.
So if you're in favor of what Julia is saying, yes, go to social media and help feed AI and go put things on the internet that will be used against us, because
Good point. Maybe you should call my burner phone.
Maybe you should write a letter and send it to us at our P.O. box and avoid supporting what's the name? The Terminator.
Oh.
What's it called?
The Terminator?
No, the name of the company in the Terminator.
Oh gosh. I don't remember.
They got to blow up the building.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of what it is? Oh man, I'm so like ingrained because I want to say cryonics, which is AI.
Yeah. I know. You'll think of it like in the middle of the night.
Cyberdyne.
Oh, Cyberdyne.
Cyberdyne Systems, we must blow up the building. We could just hit the erase button. No, we'll blow it up. Why be subtle?
Oh my gosh. Well, we're like nearing on 2 hours here, so we should probably.
Which is fine because the movie's 2.5 hours, so we just talked for 30 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all. No, I love this movie. It got a bum rap when it came out. Man, it was, you know, you could say people misunderstood it, which is actually a very typical reaction of most Kubrick movies. But I think it needs to be.
You said it was a Spielberg movie, though.
It is a Spielberg film.
Oh, okay.
But it was heavily,
I know.
Yeah, everybody wants to look at it like, well, this is his part and this is his part, and you can compartmentalize. No, like this, most filmmakers have masters that they look to. In this case, this was a friend adapting another friend's vision and trying to make it both his film and also his friend's film. It's one of a kind in that way, but it's also, I think, a perfect film. I love this movie, and it takes bold swings. I think those swings work. It's a disturbing film, and I think for good reasons. It's great science fiction. I wish more American movies were like this. Certainly mainstream summer movies. I love seeing films like this in a season where, let's face it, this movie came out around the same time as The Fast and the Furious.
So if you've actually listened to this without watching AI, then go back and watch it.
Yeah.
Because I definitely enjoyed this time around.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it. I think that concludes our discussion of AI, artificial intelligence.
Good night, listeners.